Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to the next in our series of the Polar Routes Inspiration series with Kari Herbert and Poseidon Expeditions. My name is Martin Johnson, Director and Co-founder of Polar Routes. And first of all, I think a big thank you to everyone. I can see really good numbers from those that have signed up, which is great. I think if we'd been 24 hours ago on the hottest day of the year, I think it would have been an interesting session. However, what better way to cool down from all of this heat by having one of our Polar Routes Inspiration series, which today is all about the Arctic with special guest Kari Herbert, who I'll introduce in a bit. And we're going to be looking at the Arctic as a whole and also looking at Svalbard as well. It's the first time we've done an Arctic themed session, so I hope that you enjoy it. Let me just share my presentation so that we can get started with today. Hopefully, here we go, pop that on. I hope everybody can see that presentation. And we shall get started now. So we have got a couple of images. One, of course, of the king of the Arctic there, and another one here of Greenland. So we're going to be seeing lots more magical imagery of the amazing Arctic regions over this session. So this is what is coming up tonight. We have got some, oh, hang on, I'm not in presentation mode. Thank you to that person. Let me just do that. What? Oh dear, we have tested this, believe it or not. Right, let me stop the share. Here we go, technical difficulties. And let's do it with that. I hope that is now in presentation mode for everyone. If it isn't, pop it in the Q&A and I will try to correct. Yes, it is. Thank you, Kay. Kay Gray, thank you for spotting that for me. Right, great. We shall get on to it. So just to start, this is what's coming up tonight. Just a couple of minutes from myself, you'll be very pleased to hear. I'll be introducing Polar Routes because there is some people on tonight who are new to the company. So just a quick introduction from me. Don't worry, not more than a couple of minutes, because tonight we want to be hearing from our special guest, Kari Herbert, and she'll be leading most of the session today. After her, there'll be a little session by Kate from Poseidon Expeditions, all about Svalbard cruises. We will then be having a Q&A session followed by the prize draw. And tonight's prize is 2 items. Normally there's a choice, but tonight you're getting both, 2 for the price of 1. First of all, it is the book We Are Explorers, Extraordinary Women Who Discovered the World, which is the book, one of the books by Kari. And to go with it, whilst you're reading, a bottle of Northwest Passage Expedition gin, one of the favourites in the office. So you, if you stick around, we'll be doing the prize draw at the end. As you know, for those that have been to these sessions before, as you know, you must be here at the end in order to claim your prize. Big thank you again to Poseidon Expeditions, who this is their second Polar Routes Inspiration Series session, and as mentioned before, we can't do these sessions without a partner. So thank you very much to Poseidon Expeditions. We'll be hearing more from Kate about Poseidon a little bit later on. So just a quick introduction to Polar Routes for those that are new. For those that have heard this before, don't worry, it's not more than a couple of minutes. But we are Polar Routes and we are specialists in expedition cruises only to the polar regions. The polar regions is an absolutely incredible region, both at the top of the world and, of course, at the bottom of the world as well. We're looking at the Arctic tonight, but we do also do Antarctica as well. Expedition cruising, all about small ship exploration and, most importantly, getting off the ship into zodiacs and onto the ice for up-close personal experiences with the wildlife, the landscapes, and the incredible polar regions. That's what we do. We now work with over 22 leading expedition operators that have all been selected by us to ensure they offer the very best quality and value. We can compare all of the operators in one place with a team of people here in the UK that are all experts on the polar regions, detailed knowledge of the ships, and they're all have travelled first-hand experience on there. And we can also package that cruise with flights, transfers, and indeed some exciting land packages either before or after your cruise as well, should you wish to do so. On the list on the screen, some of the operators that we work with, so big names that you've probably heard of, and some smaller names who are real specialists in their field, which includes Poseidon Expeditions, who are sponsoring tonight's session. As you would expect, prices are always the same or better than the cruise operators direct. That's guaranteed. All operator offers are always applicable through us, plus you'll see the odd exclusive Polar Route special as well. You can also earn points on your cruising that you can use towards future cruising through our reward scheme called My Routes Rewards. And of course, in this day and age, as you'd expect, 100% financial protection for everything that we put together. Our charity partners for this year is the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust, and £10 per person from every booking goes towards that fantastic charity. Plus we do regular fundraising throughout the year ourselves, and you can also optionally add into that as well. So that's the introduction to who we are for anybody that's new, and just a little refresher for those that are new. So across this session, you're going to be hearing from Kari. You can see at the bottom that there should be a Q&A box already utilised well this evening, I think, as well. We are going to have a sort of 10 to 15 minute Q&A at the end. What we always say is, as soon as you think of the question, put it in the box. Don't wait till the end. Put it in the box as soon as you think of it, and then I'll collate them all and ask the questions to both panelists. So whether it's for Kari or whether it's a question specific to Kate and Poseidon Expeditions, or if it's a more general question, I'll help answer that question for you as well. But as soon as you think of it, pop it in the Q&A and off we go. So let's get on to the main reason that we're all here, and that is to hear from this amazing lady. I'm hopefully going to do her justice with my introduction. Kari is the elder daughter of the famous polar explorer Sir Wally Herbert and his wife Marie. She spent the first few years of her life living on a remote island in the Arctic with the polar Inuit community in Northwest Greenland, which means that her first language was actually Inuktun, which is the local dialect of Greenlandic. At the age of 4, she accompanied her parents on a journey that took them through winter blizzards in a caravan to spend time with the Sami of Lapland, and she's obviously continued to travel ever since. After studying art at Portsmouth, she's become a prolific travel writer and photographer for leading newspapers and magazines, twice being the judge for the Guardian's annual travel writing competition. She wrote her first book, The Explorer's Daughter, in 2005, and has had several further books published as well, including Explorer's Sketchbooks, which was co-authored with her husband, Dr. Hugh Lewis-Jones, which for anyone who is a regular on the session, they will have seen him in the previous one. Her latest book, as you saw before, is We Are Explorers: Extraordinary Women Who Discovered the World, and that is part of tonight's prize. She's appeared on several radio, television programs, solo exhibitions in the UK and Europe, given lectures at the Royal Geographical Society, National Maritime Museum, and TEDx, to name a few. She's also a fellow at the Royal Geographical Society and a member of the Explorers Club in New York City. I'd invite her to put her camera on, hopefully. And here we are.
Hello.
Hi, Kari. I hope that does you some justice, because it is such an amazing...
Quite a lot, isn't it?
Such an amazing, I don't know what you call it, a profile of just wonderful experiences. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Yeah, really looking forward to hearing everything that you've got to say.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Martin, for a very warm welcome and start. And yeah, lovely.
Warm welcome on this warm day. Brilliant. Well, I'll hand. Yes, indeed. I'll hand over to you, Kari, and I'll come back on at the end. But all over to you.
Thank you very much. So thank you so much for coming this evening. I know it's incredibly warm, so I'm hoping that some of the lovely images I'm going to share with you and stories will help cool you down a little bit this evening. The polar regions is obviously a place that is incredibly dear to my heart, so that's what I really want to share with you this evening. So I've got some pretty pictures to show you, and hopefully this is going to work, so just bear with me a moment and hopefully this will work. So I'm hoping you can see. I am just going to introduce myself a little bit first. So already Martin has already talked about quite a few of the bits and bobs that I do. So I am a writer first and foremost, a polar traveller. I've written a few books. This photograph was actually taken quite a few years ago, so there's quite a few books that have been published since then. But as you can see, my focus is very much about exploration, adventure, and extraordinary people and extraordinary stories. And it's really something that has fascinated me ever since I was a young girl. I get to the Arctic almost every year when there isn't a pandemic, or the Antarctic. I love the polar regions, both north and south. But this evening, we're really talking mostly about the polar regions because that's our real focus for this evening. I also, like Martin said, I've written for all the big travel magazines and newspapers and that sort of thing. So I've been to some really extraordinary places all over the world, through to deserts and jungles and all those kind of extraordinary places. So I've had some really wonderful experiences, but the Arctic is always where I feel like I'm sort of at home, really. It's where my heart is. And so it's a real pleasure to be able to share some of the stories with you. So the reason why the Arctic is such a special place, and as you can see, I want to just share, like I've said, if you've watched one of these webinars before, you may have seen my husband, Hugh Lewis-Jones. And we can be serious, but I just wanted to also just show the fun that we have on some of these wonderful expeditions that we've had with Poseidon. So Poseidon is one of our favorite companies to work with. We love the ships and we love the people, and they've got a great ethics. And so we do have a wonderful, wonderful time. So these are just a few little snaps just to give you a taste of the kind of adventures that we have in the Arctic. But it all really started with my dad. So my dad was Sir Wally Herbert, an incredible man, an incredible father, and gifted writer and visionary artist, an extraordinary polar traveller and explorer, and just really a very well, he was a pioneer, not the kind of person that you generally come across. And so his sights were really set on doing something extraordinary ever since he was a very young boy. That was his dream, was to become a polar explorer. He was told that he wouldn't be able to do it, that the only way to go and see the world was to join the army. So he did train as a surveyor. But that actually stood him in really good stead, because then when he saw an advert that keen young men were required on expeditions to Antarctica, he applied and he got the job. So that's really where he started. And I just wanted to give you a little overview, really, of my dad, partly because he's just an extraordinary man, but also because it really kind of gives a sense of some extraordinary parts of the world, and also why I'm so interested in the place. So Dad went to Antarctica in the 1950s, and it really was a place of virgin territory where people really didn't go down to Antarctica unless they were mapping, exploring, that sort of thing. There was no tourist ships or anything like that in those days. And for Dad, it was really a chance to prove himself as an extraordinary traveller in the polar regions, but also to bring something back. And bringing something back is what he believed a real, true polar explorer was. And in his case, it was drawing extraordinary maps. So he mapped tens of thousands of square miles of Antarctica, even going as far as being the first man to lead an expedition on the first traverse of the Antarctic Peninsula. So if any of you have been to the peninsula, you know how difficult it can be to travel there. It's really a very, very challenging and difficult part of the world, with really treacherous glaciers and all sorts of very difficult terrain to negotiate. So he was the first to traverse that. And then, really wanting to do something even greater, he set his sights on the far north, and he decided to mount an extraordinary expedition crossing the whole of the Arctic Ocean, from the longest axis from Alaska to Spitsbergen, using only himself and some dog teams, and to travel in the ways of the great explorers Scott and Shackleton and Nansen. And one of the reasons why I just wanted to mention this also was because he spent some time in Longyearbyen in Spitsbergen, Svalbard, and he met a man he called him the Hunter of Moskasham. It's a wonderful story. And he's a young man who's kayaking around the archipelago, and he met this wonderful trapper. And he was an extraordinary kind of wizened old man who'd seen all sorts of extraordinary things and had some incredible adventures. And one of the things he was saying to this young man, fresh from Antarctica, was, you need to do something big with your life. Dad said, yeah, I know, I really want to do this extraordinary journey. What can I do? And I've got some ideas, but maybe this, maybe that. And this old man, this old trapper said, you see that? And he looked down on the beach, and there was a beautiful piece of driftwood that looked very, very old. And he said, where do you think that came from? My dad said, oh, I don't know. And he said, it came from the other side of the Arctic. It has drifted right across the Arctic Ocean, rather like the extraordinary explorer Nansen, who had the Fram, which was, the idea was it to be built across the Arctic and go to the North Pole. Why don't you use the drifting ice and mount an expedition? So this set my father's mind into all these wonderful ideas of how he could mount this expedition, and he went ahead and did it. It took him 5 years of planning, but this was the journey he did, all the way from Alaska all the way to Spitsbergen, the most magnificent journey. Very, very difficult, with 3 companions and dog teams, and that was it. They left Alaska with all they could carry on their sledges, and there was no hope of return at that point, because it was almost impossible to land any kind of aircraft on the ice and be able to safely take off again. So when they left one side of the Arctic, it was their full mission to get to the other side. And they got to the North Pole on the 6th of April 1969. It was a historic moment, but still their journey wasn't finished. They had to get to the other side. So they did do this. They did manage to do this extraordinary journey, and they were on the ice all the way through for 16 months without coming off the ice, and made it to the other side. Absolutely extraordinary. And then my father had a girlfriend who was waiting for him back home. She quickly became his wife. This is my mum. And I came very soon after. And 10 months into my life, my dad was taking me all the way to the Arctic. So the idea was that we'd go and live on a tiny island at the top of Northwest Greenland with a very isolated tribe of polar Inuit hunters, and we'd learn how to the idea was really, my dad wanted to document their culture because it was changing fast already, and he really wanted to write books and make films and experience what it was like to actually live in a community of polar Inuit and record their way of life. So this was the most extraordinary start for me. This is where we went to. So that's Herbert Island in the background there. You see that little box on the map, and that's where we were. So we were very, very far north. We were the most northerly, continuously inhabited settlement in the world, and it happened to be called Herbert Island. And there it is. It looks absolutely beautiful. This is springtime. It looks pink and beautiful and blissful and just magical. This is what it normally looks like. So it was a really, really hostile place, but also an incredible experience. I don't know if you can see there. So those are little wooden huts. They've been shipped in from Denmark, and then they were shored up with rock and turf behind, and they actually had guy ropes securing them down into the permafrost to stop them from blowing away in these extraordinary blizzards that would hit the island very often. So this is our little tiny hut on Herbert Island. It looked very beautiful when we first arrived. And as my mum got closer holding this 10-month-old baby, she realized that actually it was covered in old grimy skins, and inside was absolutely revolting, covered in blubber and all sorts of things, unmentionable things, because it had only ever been used as a resting place for passing hunters. So it was a pretty grim start to 2 years of living on this island. But as you can see, very quickly, my dad made it into a very cozy home. And he said to my mum, "Don't worry, darling, we'll paint in the smell." So it was very much a real experience of, just really trying to find a way of making it a really beautiful and wonderful experience. So my mum and I really fell in love with the place very, very quickly. This is my mum doing her best Sound of Music impression. As you can see, we've spent a lot of time on the ice. So this is on the fjord just outside of Herbert Island. We did lots of long journeys in the summer and the winter. So of course you have midnight sun where the sun doesn't set. And then in the winter you have 5 months of darkness. So it really is a very extreme part of the world. Here's us on this isn't a studio shoot. This is actually on a very treacherous trip to the American Air Base, which is about 97 miles away. So a very, very difficult trip. But we really had some wonderful adventures and got very, very close with the Inuit. So they became like a second family to me. These are like my brothers and sisters. I still communicate with them all the time. We forged a really strong bond, and with all the people in the community. I won't go into great depth because I don't have a lot of time today, but it was a real simple way of life. So we're sitting there on a single platform, those little, very simple wooden platforms, and the whole family would share one single platform bed. There was no running water, no electricity. We'd go onto the ice and collect ice from freshwater icebergs and melt that down for our everyday needs. And light came from burning oil lamps and that sort of thing. So really, really extremely basic way of life, but a really magical and beautiful experience, particularly because of the people and learning how they have this extraordinary relationship with their environment. They had an inbuilt understanding of the weather patterns, of the ice, of the animals, and there was this real sense of deep, deep connection with the polar wilderness. And it's something that I learned at a very early age too, to have profound respect for this wonderful place. So we're still dressed in the old traditional ways. These are a couple of the children from Herbert Island, and then that's me a little bit older. So we returned to the Arctic many, many times as I was growing up, and then went back again to write my book, The Explorer's Daughter. And seeing how the communities have changed considerably has been a real privilege. It's been difficult at times, but really a really special experience. But for me now, what's really exciting is to be able to go to the Arctic with my family and share this beautiful, beautiful adventures in this incredible place. So it's my extremely cheeky daughter, Nellie, who has been on journeys with me and on the Poseidon ship since she was about 5, I think. She has experienced some wonderful things. And for us, it's very much about the sense of the vastness of the Arctic. So there are very few places in the world, I think, unless you go deep into the deserts, for instance, where you can get a real sense of the enormity of space and nature, and just find yourself in awe of this extraordinary planet on which we live. And so the polar regions are a really special place for reminding us that we are just guardians, and that there's beauty and majesty in these extraordinary places. And literally on any of these trips to any part of the Arctic, you'll get a sense of the beauty and the majesty. And literally just walking out on deck, the light changes constantly. The clouds, the sea, the scenery, it really is. And it's just this extraordinary interaction with our beautiful environment up in the north, and of course fantastic wildlife. So this was a bowhead whale that was literally, this is without a zoom. So you can imagine how close this is, how amazing this moment was of hearing the breathing that close of a really ancient and phenomenal creature. And so these are some of the extraordinary things that you can expect, or hope for at least, when you go to these beautiful parts of the world. And also some cuteness too. So some polar huskies, because it's always nice to have puppies in a presentation, I find. They're very, very sweet. But really, it is a sense of coming to a place where you can both lose yourself and find yourself. That's the sense that I get. It's a real way of expanding everything, expanding all your senses. And if you can do that when you're in a place like this, you'll be hugely, hugely rewarded. It's a wonderful experience to share with family as well. Like I say, I take Nellie up to the Arctic, and she's grown up seeing all sorts of different parts of the polar regions. The Arctic is particularly beautiful for me. I do love Antarctica. It's spectacular for me, going to the Arctic and seeing the just a proliferation of bird life and animal life is just absolutely wonderful. It's really, really special place, and really a wonderful place where you can actually, you take time as well with these cruises. We get a chance to come ashore, and for me and Nellie, we really enjoy painting and writing. So you can do your extraordinary hikes and you can take wonderful pictures, but also I really recommend having some time to get to know the locals and also just to really sort of sit and absorb and try and record it as much as possible. And also occasionally take your daughter to the North Pole, sadly not this year. But if that's ever a place you fancy going, then I highly, highly recommend it. And I also very much recommend the jacuzzi on the deck when you're surrounded by ice. So that's just a really brief sort of overview, really, of some of the things that I find really exciting about this beautiful, beautiful place. It's a place that I, when I haven't been for a while, I feel a deep longing in my soul. I really, really do. It's like a craving. It's just the most extraordinary thing. And I think if any of you have been to the Arctic already, you'll know that feeling of that pull, that draw. It is just amazing. And for people who've thought, I'm not sure about the Arctic, maybe I'd rather go somewhere else, I honestly urge you to give it a go. Sorry, that's my family in the background if you hear them. But just give it a try, because honestly, it is an adventure of a lifetime. We have incredible people on board who are so knowledgeable and so just generous with sharing all their experiences and their time. So it really is a very, very special experience. And quite honestly, there's nowhere else like it. So I hope that gives you a sense of why I love going back. And I'm really looking forward to, if you've got, hopefully seeing you. I'm going up to Svalbard in 2 weeks' time. So I'm hoping that Kate is going to talk about that, and maybe Martin can introduce that too. But I'd love to introduce you to some of these parts of the world. It's just really, really, really very special place.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kari. And those pictures are they're just incredible. They're just incredible. Some of them must be quite historic as well, I imagine.
Yes, I mean, I'd be giving my age away if I told you when they were taken. They are quite old.
No, but they're just, the quality of them is just absolutely incredible for what I'm guessing was originally printed on film, and then I guess uploaded.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, we will have a Q&A at the end of the session, because I'm going to introduce Kate in a minute, but I hope you don't mind, Kari. Would you mind if I asked you about your first sort of Arctic experience in Greenland? Because there's a great hopefully little story, and you don't mind sharing it, about when you got left on the ice.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, so I went to the Arctic, obviously, when I was 10 months old. And then came back to England and became a good little English schoolgirl, and then went back again when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and was taken back to the community, which was the most extraordinary experience. And everybody was so welcoming, and it was wonderful. It was like being back home again. But one of the girls from the community, who I didn't know, She wasn't one of my brothers or sisters, but a girl who was in the community nonetheless and seemed to be a bit curious about this girl who'd come from outside and was getting an awful lot of attention. So she decided that actually what would be a great idea would be for us to go out. She had her own, she was about the same age as me. She had her own little sledge with 2 huskies. And she had trained the huskies themselves, and she's very proud of them. She said, do you want to come out on the ice with me and we'll go and have an adventure? I said, yeah, that'd be amazing. So we went out on the ice, and it was the most extraordinary experience going out on our own with just 2 kids going out on the ice. It just felt amazing. She said, well, go off to that big iceberg over there. And I was like, yes, this is amazing. It's great. We got to this iceberg, and she said, oh, look, there's a great slide. Why don't you climb the iceberg and slide down? It'd be so exciting. It'd be so wonderful. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So dutifully climbed up the iceberg. As I got to the top of the iceberg, I could see her speeding off, speeding off back to the community, leaving me a very long way away on my own on the ice, feeling really rather terrified. I'm very scared. It's polar bear territory. So it really was not a great idea for a young girl to be left out there on her own. So I came off the iceberg, and I was walking feeling very scared and very sorry for myself and very cross with this little girl who'd left me there and felt rather betrayed, all these emotions going through. But then as I was walking, I sort of had this sense of real peace, actually, just a real wow, because the sun was shining, and it's like there are times when the ice looks like literally a carpet of diamonds. It was so beautiful, and it was so quiet, and it was so amazing. And I'd never, well, at that age, sort of been on my own like that in such an extraordinary place before. So it was amazing. So in fact, after it was a bit of a prank, but actually turned out to be like the most amazing gift. And then of course the alarm was raised and everybody came out to rescue me, and it was fine. But yeah, it was a very, very special moment.
I think that must be every parent's worst nightmare. But I just love that. I just love that story. That actually, it's one of the things we say as well, is that because the cruises can be so busy, can't they?
Yeah.
But actually take some time to separate yourself from either the rest of the passengers or even your travel companions, and actually just sit and absorb the Arctic.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, that would be my absolute, and I do say this when I'm on the ships as well, either individually to people and also in my talks, of just really taking time just to be and to absorb it, because those are the times that you'll really remember as well. They really stay with you, those times. And yeah, you're right, it can be quite busy and everyone's excited and having a wonderful time, and you want to share it with people around you, but also it's that sense of the quiet, and then you get wonderful wildlife experiences quite often as well, where the wildlife will just naturally very quietly and beautifully come to you, which is just wonderful.
Brilliant. Apart from polar bears, that's not.
Apart from polar bears, not such a good idea.
Oh, Kari, thank you so much for sharing your pictures and your presentation with us. Really, really appreciate it. If I can ask you to stop sharing, we can
Yes.
invite the second half. We can invite Kate to pop her camera on. And as mentioned before, if you have any questions for Kari or for Kate to do with Poseidon, or just generally, pop them into the Q&A box at the bottom, and we'll come back round after Kate and ask some of those to both of our panelists. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Kari, and we'll see you a little bit later. And Kate, over to you.
Thank you very much, Martin, and good evening, everyone. Just bear with me for 1 second. I would like to show some beautiful images to you and talk a little bit more about the cruises in the Arctic. Just 1 second. Okay. I hope you can see it now, hopefully in the presentation mode. Well, once again, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. And Kari, that was very, very inspirational and motivational speech and talk. Thank you so much. And as you have already heard, my name is Kate, and I work at Poseidon Expeditions. And to be honest, I have been with the company for almost 11 years now. It has been quite an adventure, I have to say, but I loved every day of it. And tonight I'm actually talking to you from Cyprus. I'm based out of Limassol at the moment, and I can definitely contribute to your feelings and comments about the heat wave, because we are at 35 degrees pretty much every day. So AC has been my best friend for a while. As I mentioned, I'm talking to you from Cyprus, but as Poseidon is quite an international company, we have other offices. We have one of our offices in Hamburg in Germany, and another one is in Providence in the United States. So we do welcome travelers from all over the world to join our expedition cruises. As you can see, Poseidon has 23 years of excellent experience in the polar regions. And actually this summer, basically in July, we celebrate our 23rd anniversary. We have started in 1999, and since then we have been going from pole to pole, conquering the Arctic and Antarctica, as well as the North Pole. And as today we are talking about the Arctic, I would like to talk a little bit more about the ship that we take to the Arctic, and of course about the programs that we offer, especially concentrating on Svalbard. And right now I would like to show you the ship that we operate in the Arctic. You can see a beautiful Sea Spirit on your screens right now. And during the summertime, Sea Spirit operates in the Arctic, and during the winter time, we take her down to Antarctica. And I would like to mention a couple of things about the ship, and actually it might seem a little bit familiar for you, because Sea Spirit has been built in the 90s in Italy, and it is also a part of a Renaissance family. So basically there are 4 more sister ships that look just like her, and some of them do go to polar regions, and some of them actually go to absolutely different areas in the world. Well, talking about the ship itself, I would like to mention that one of the biggest advantages is that we're a small expedition ship. To explain that, it means that we can take not more than 114 passengers at a time per cruise. And of course, as Kari mentioned, as Martin mentioned before as well, it is very important to go on a small ship, because only then you will be able to really plunge into the Arctic nature and wildlife, and also stay a little bit alone in the Arctic, because you will be able to have the most time on land when you're visiting on a cruise. And right now I would like to invite you on a short tour of our ship. First of all, I would like to show you what the cabins or the suites look like. And you can see that it's actually a very nice and comfortable area where you can spend the evenings after you had a very busy day outside of the ship. What I really like about the Spirit is that it performs this retro maritime style, you know, with the wooden and brass design, and you know, you can come back. It's quite spacious. All of the cabins that we have aboard the Spirit, they have either portholes, windows, or even private balconies. So after you have had all the explorations of the day, this is the place you come back to and have some rest. You stay alone with your thoughts and just try to process everything that you see. And of course, you have everything that you might need in your cabin. Going further, of course, we do have a restaurant, because all the meals that are happening during the expedition cruise, they happen on the ship. And when we are very lucky with the weather, we do invite you to join our barbecue on the outside deck. It's absolutely epic experience, I have to say, because you're sitting quietly in the sunshine, enjoying absolutely amazing meals on the outside deck. Of course, we slowed down a little bit so that you could enjoy both the meal and the landscapes. in the evenings, we do have a lot of guests coming down to the bar, having a little bit of a drink and sharing their emotions, their experiences from the whole day of explorations. If you would like to have some quiet time or read a book, we have a really great library on the ship. We do have a lot of books that are about the polar regions, so you can definitely have some time, have some quiet time for yourself or with the book. As Kari mentioned in her talk, on the outside deck, one of the fun things that we do aboard Spirit is the jacuzzi. During the day, the ship repositions from spot A to spot B. And actually, during that time, you can take advantage of the jacuzzi and really enjoy the view and sometimes wildlife as well. One of the beloved places on the ship is, of course, the bridge. And what's great about expedition cruising is that you can go to the bridge pretty much at any time. So you can come, take binoculars, you can watch the wildlife, you can look at the GPS, you can talk to the officers or the captain on the bridge, and they're very communicative and they're very welcoming. They really love when guests come aboard. One of the best places to be, for sure. Going further, of course, when you're traveling to the polar regions, you learn a lot. And this is exactly why we have a team of professionals being with you on the ship all the time, doing the workshops and the presentations. And like Kari said, amazing people you meet there, really. And they really share a lot of experiences and knowledge that they have about the polar regions. Moving forward, one of the most important places on the ship is marina that you can see on your screen right now. Why is it important? Because all the off-ship activities or on-land activities, they start here. All the passengers come down to marina and they embark into the little boats that you can see here. They're called zodiacs. And off you go to the adventures in the Arctic. And of course, nothing would be possible without the expedition team. This is the team of experts that is with you on the ship, telling you about their personal stories, about their personal experiences, doing the workshops, presentations, briefings, and of course, they are always with you on land or on the Zodiac when we're doing the cruising. It's such a great privilege, to be traveling with the experts, because everything you see, everything you observe, you understand why and what you see. So it is a very great experience, and all the information that you get during the workshops and lectures, we call it edutainment. We have been talking so much about the Arctic today, and even though my last trip was to Antarctica, South Georgia, and Falkland Islands, it was last March, I have to say that still the Arctic and the Svalbard in particular has a very, very special place in my heart. Right now, I would like to share with you the programs of the expedition cruising that we will be running in the Arctic next summer. Even though, as we speak, Sea Spirit is actually operating in the area of Svalbard, taking our lucky passengers to see the wildlife and to enjoy the beauty of the Arctic. So next summer, we will be running 2 programs. One of them is the Best of Svalbard, and it's for 12 days, and you can see the planned itinerary on this map. And the other one, just to compare it, is for 14 days. It means that we will have much more time to explore the archipelago of Svalbard. So as you see, it's 14 days, but we will try to go as far away north as possible to be able to explore every corner of Svalbard. And we've been talking so much about the wildlife and about the nature. So right now, I would really like to go ahead and show you what it looks like. Of course, the kings of the Arctic, the polar bears. This is exactly why a lot of guests are joining the Arctic cruises, is to be able to see polar bears in a natural habitat. And of course, Svalbard is the place to do it. Encounters with the polar bears are absolutely unique for everyone, and they're very, very special time. You do see them on land, you do see them in the water, and it's absolutely unique experience, I have to say. Of course, let's not forget about the other Arctic wildlife species. For example, walrus. Actually, Svalbard is a very nice place to see walrus, and especially during the summertime when they are very active, when they're breeding. So when we are doing the landings and the zodiac cruisings, we do see quite a few colonies of walrus. Let's not forget that Svalbard is quite diverse. So not only you get to see really polar wildlife species, you can also see some polar reindeers. And of course, the landscape, you can see it's absolutely different from all the ice. You also get to see a little bit of a green grass. They are quite attentive to people, so they can be scared away quite easily. But sometimes when you're lucky and you're very quiet, you can get quite close and get a beautiful shot of the polar reindeer. Let's not forget about the bird life in the Arctic, because it is actually quite majestic. And during the ship cruising, we invite our guests on the outside decks with our ornithologists, and we do observe a lot of different birds. For example, right here on this picture, you can see Arctic tern, and it's an absolutely beautiful bird, and I think it matches very, very well with the Arctic landscape. And right now, I would like to tell you a little bit more of what the expedition cruise is and what kind of activities we do when we are not on the ship. One of them is zodiac cruising, and I did mention it a couple of times already. It is actually a very beautiful opportunity to get very, very close to the ice edge, to the beautiful icebergs. And sometimes when we do the zodiac cruising, of course, we're always on the lookout for the wildlife, and we get lucky a lot. You know, we see a lot of seals. Sometimes we even get to see polar bears on the ice or in the beautiful icebergs like on this picture, and it is really, really rewarding. You know, you spend a couple of hours on the water, but what you see, you can never plan it, but you have to be very, very open-minded. And of course, then the wildlife rewards you with the beautiful encounters. Every zodiac cruise, for every zodiac cruise, you have one of the expedition team members in the zodiac, and they tell you what you see, why this is the color, why this is blue, and why this is red. So it's a very unique experience, you know, to be able to understand why you see things. Usually when you are on the expedition ship, you have 2 or 3 activities a day. Usually we do one landing when you do some hikes, and then in the afternoon, for example, you do the zodiac cruise. If the weather allows, we would definitely take you out for another activity in the evening. When we were talking about the small ships, I would like to say that it's important for you when you're choosing your Arctic trip to go on a small one, because when we operate in the Arctic and Antarctica, we have to follow quite a few regulations. One of the most important ones is that you can take, as an operator, you can take only 100 passengers off the ship to the land at a time. So with Sea Spirit being able to bring maximum of 114, and usually we have around 100 and 105, we can provide really maximum time for you on land. And this is exactly what we talked about before. Not only you can get on a hike and you can see the beautiful wildlife, but you will have time to sit and just to try to get plunged and to immerse into the beautiful Arctic nature. And of course, I have to say that the Arctic is the paradise for photographers. Absolutely multiple amazing opportunities to take pictures of the wildlife and of course the landscapes. I would like to talk about kayaking in the Arctic in particular as well, because this is one of the activities that will definitely let you to know the Arctic as close as possible. For each trip, we have 8 kayakers, and you have to really book this activity in advance, but you will never regret it. Of course, we want you to have a little bit of experience beforehand, and after that, you will feel definitely confident and very, very convenient in the ice. I have to say that each trip we do kayaking, and absolutely amazing opportunities to meet the wildlife and to see epic nature when you are doing it from the water, when you're as close to the water as possible in the kayak. Maybe you thought, what kind of fun things we do when we are on the ship? So one of the fun things is the polar plunge. And I have to say that when I was, for example, traveling to the Arctic, I thought, maybe I will not do it. But when you're there, when you're in the atmosphere, when you're seeing people who are absolutely excited about jumping into the ice cold water, here you are. So there's definitely an opportunity for everyone who wants to proceed. And at the end, you even get a certificate that you have done the polar plunge in the Arctic. A lot of happy faces, right? You probably have noticed that all the guests were wearing red parkas on the pictures that I have shown you. So every guest who joins Sea Spirit Arctic cruise, they get the expedition parka to wear during the cruise and also to keep. It's windproof, waterproof. It keeps you very, very warm when you're going outside of the ship for the adventures in the Arctic. And of course, I would like to mention that not only the parka that we provide you with, but also the boots that are very convenient for all the hiking that we do in the Arctic. And the last but not the least, I was quite lucky to get some footage from the ship. From the current cruises, so from this summer, from a couple of weeks ago. I know that the videos can be a little bit slow via Zoom, but I hope you will be able to see at least some amazing shots that we have recently, really recently done in the Arctic with Sea Spirit. Of course, what can be more cute than a polar bear and a cub. And there is one more video of the polar bear that I wanted to show you. I hope you are able to see at least a little bit, and just, you know, to try and to explain the sense of what it feels like to be on the expedition ship in the Arctic, and what kind of encounters you can have. Beautiful sails, also from the very recent cruise around 3 weeks ago, the Arctic Tern. One more thing that I just wanted to add, and I will not take a lot of your time, even if you're not a professional photographer. You can just stay there, enjoy, and make memories with your eyes. Because on each trip, we do have a photographer who does make a lot of beautiful pictures and makes a video for you. And at the end of the trip, you get a little memory stick, so you take in memories with you back home as well. Last but not the least, a video of the humpback whale in the Arctic. Again, just from one of the previous cruises that we ran this summer. And that would be it from me. And before I thank you all for your time, I would like to say that for all the information about expedition cruises in the Arctic and Antarctica aboard Sea Spirit with Poseidon, if you would like to have more information about the trips, dates, all the available deals and very exclusive rates, please contact our partners, Polar Routes. Their polar specialists are absolutely amazing and will be glad to help you. Thank you very much for your time. Sorry if I took a little bit longer than planned.
No worry, Kate. Thank you very much, and amazing to see some of that footage just from the last couple of weeks as well, of the whale and the polar bear as well. Just amazing footage. Brilliant. We have had some questions in, so Kate, if I could just ask you to stop sharing, and hopefully Kari is still there. She, great. I can see her coming back online. Thanks again, Kari. There's a couple of questions from people along the same lines, and I think it's probably the perfect question for you, Kari. And it's asking about the biggest changes that you've seen in the Arctic over the number of years that you've been visiting. Obviously concerns around perhaps the amount of wildlife, climate change. So over to you, kind of what have you seen?
Well, I've seen quite a bit. So I have been going to the Arctic since the early 70s. So there we are, I've given away my age. And has changed considerably. It really has changed considerably. I've seen it right across the Arctic, particularly in the far north. So the ice is thinning. It's breaking up earlier each year, and it's taking longer to freeze. It doesn't freeze as thickly, and it is affecting the movement of the animals. It's also affecting the communities. It's not good. I need to be honest about it, because it's a place that I'm as you know, I'm extremely passionate about, and I feel very strongly about climate change and the effects that it's having in the Arctic. And I do feel there's often a question of, should there be tourism in the Arctic and that sort of thing, which I'm just going to put in here too, because I'm sure someone will ask it.
It's in there already. It was my next question, so go for it.
There we are.
Two answers for the price of one. Brilliant.
Yeah, well, it's often asked, and of course, why not? It's an extremely valid question. So I've seen the effects of tourism in the Arctic as only really as a positive thing if it's done well, and if it's done well with small ships, then it's actually incredibly beneficial to the communities. It's also really beneficial for our understanding of the Arctic. And one of the things that we often say, when we're taking people up there, is that we really hope that we're also creating ambassadors for the Arctic, in that if people have been there and they see the beauty, they see the effects of, just see how extraordinary this place is, and really get a sense of the fragility of the whole planet, not just about the Arctic regions, but about our whole planet, about having this understanding, this connection with this extraordinary place that we live on, then hopefully we get passionate about it, and hopefully we go home and we make some changes and we talk to people and we can do something about it. If we all stay at home and just kind of put our heads in the sand and then never go anywhere, as long as we're traveling responsibly, and if we're trying to help minimize our carbon footprint. I know it's difficult when we're particularly with flights and things like that. If there are really good ways that we can offset all these things, I won't talk about that now, that's not my expertise. I do put things personally, but I wouldn't share that here necessarily. But we can travel responsibly, and as long as we're going with our eyes wide open and our hearts open too, then I think that it can only be a good thing. And actually, the communities in Greenland, it benefits them hugely. They really enjoy having that interaction, and the money that it brings in, to be blunt, is really helpful for some of these communities who have very little. So I think it's a good thing.
Brilliant. Well answered. I think that hopefully covers off a good few of the questions. I think one of the other comments, because having come back quite recently as well, is it's very apparent, isn't it, the climate change and where glaciers used to be and where they are now. But it's not to say that it's still hugely impressive as a polar region, but actually to be both impressed with what's there and see what used to be there, I think is in some ways for me the biggest stark contrast, I guess. And it's still hugely impressive to see. But I think you're right. You come back as an ambassador for the polar regions and for climate change and the effects of it, because it is so apparent to see, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Kate, I does lead in. So one of Justin's questions was about guilt of visiting, which hopefully we've covered, because tourism, I think, is a power for good to the polar regions. But there is a question on CO2 emissions. Poseidon's ship does bear a lot of that in mind. Do you know the details of the sort of what the ship is?
Well, Well, the thing is that right now we are actually looking into some of the initiatives when you can, become a part of a program where you can, even by going to the Arctic, like, it's like the same with the flight programs. But when you do, but you also take part in the certain initiatives to kind of reimburse with the pollution that you're doing. But for now, we're looking into the options to be part of this program. But what a good thing maybe to mention here is that when we actually go to Svalbard, our guests, they help us take part in the program that's called Clean Up Svalbard. So basically if we see some steel or plastic, we just pick it up and leave the place very, very clean.
Brilliant. And I think at the moment, if you are really worried about CO2, carbon offsetting is probably the simplest solution that currently exists. And there are some great schemes. I think there are some, it's not everyone's sort of cup of tea. It does feel a bit, but there are some great schemes, I think, for carbon offsetting if that's a particular concern. But hopefully we've kind of covered the topic generally in there as well. Brilliant. A couple more practical questions. There's a question around photography. So Kate, on Poseidon, I know you have a photographer on each cruise anyway. Do you run specific photography departures or groups, or is there anything around that you could just give us?
Sure. So during each trip, like you mentioned, we do have a photographer, and what they do, not only they run around and take pictures of the passengers and the wildlife, but also we do have at least 1 or 2 workshops for the guests, because our photographers, they really love to give the tips to the guests, because it's quite hard to get used to taking pictures with lots of white, right? We have lots of ice, we have lots of icebergs, and also the water. So on each cruise we do that, and what we are planning to do is to introduce, as well as in the Arctic as well as in Antarctica, to have some special trips where we would invite a couple of special guests who will be the keen and known photographers, and then this cruise will be operated slightly differently, maybe with more time on land at one spot to be able to wait for the perfect light, just to be able to provide more photographic opportunities for the keen photographers. So that's planned for the future.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kate. So I think keep in touch. We can, if it's a specific photography departure you're looking for, we can certainly help with that. But yeah, I think you get a great photography experience on pretty much any cruise. There's a question just with regards to when you're out on your it probably alludes a little bit to what we were talking about before, but sort of top tips for making the most of the time that you're on land. Should you follow the group and take everything from your expedition staff, or should you come away from the group? In the Arctic, you can't go too far because obviously polar bears. Anyone got any sort of things they want to add in about how to make the most of the time you actually have on the land and what to do with it? Open question for anyone who wants to jump in.
Kari, do you want to go first?
Okay, yeah. So I think it really varies with where you land. So sometimes when you're landing in the Arctic, it can be in a settlement or a place, maybe a small town, which might have a museum and historical places and that sort of thing. In which case, I would say very much go with the group and talk to all the experts, because quite often they've been there before. They have some really fascinating historical knowledge that is really, really useful to hear. So in situations like that, I think that's great to really, really make the most of it. If you're particularly interested in something like geology or in bird watching or in the flora and fauna, then actually it's a really lovely thing as well to just go and find the expert. We're all introduced right at the beginning anyway, so you know who's who. And then actually having a hike with those people can be really illuminating and really fantastic. So it's really just a case of just going with your feeling, I think, is, for me, is very much the case of just, if you feel like you want to have some quiet, then just go and find it. And if you are really excited and just want to learn everything, then there's all that opportunity for you there too. So I think it really just depends on where you're landing and how you're feeling.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kari. Anything to add, Kate?
I just wanted to probably add a little bit from personal experience. When I go on a cruise, on one of our cruises, what I usually do, I try to do the whole hike or try to walk around the whole perimeter, just so that at the end I have time to sit and be alone with the nature, but at the same time I don't want to, not to see everything that's offered at this very area. But what's important is to find the spot that you really like in this particular landing site, and just try to come down, to sit down, and just try to emerge with the nature.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kate. Well, I think, but conscious of time, I think that's probably a good place to conclude. I think there's a couple of very quick questions that I will just cover off very quickly. Mary Murray asks, do guests get a list of what to bring with them? I think I can speak for all cruise lines, including Poseidon. You'll get a massive list, and it's more a case of which items of the list do you want and do you need. So I think the answer to that is yes. Rosemary asks, are there solo cabins? Kate, there isn't dedicated solo cabins, but you do good solo supplements on certain cruises, don't you?
Correct.
So it is, but if you are a solo traveller, please speak to us. We'll have a look through the schedule to cover that off as well. Two last quick things. Kay asked about, are there any previous sessions on Greenland specifically? There isn't any previous sessions, but it is in the program coming up, so stay tuned with us for that. And then there was a question just about the decline in wildlife, which I've not gone into because I think that's probably a different, it's also a very big can of worms. But just one quick thing that I recently learned is that the polar bear population in Svalbard is currently about 3,000 and sitting quite steady. So there isn't necessarily a big decline of polar bears in the Svalbard region. I'm just talking specifically because obviously worldwide it is a different story, but not also a particular increase either. And the sort of size of Svalbard is 60,000 square kilometers. So there is a good chance of seeing polar bears in Svalbard, though it's never 100% guaranteed. I think that's fair to say. So hopefully that covers that off as well. Brilliant. I'd like to thank both Kari and Kate. Thank you so much for your time this evening, for your input, for the amazing presentations and photography as well. So thank you so much. If you would like to see more of Kari, there are two ways that you can do that. And I'm just going to share my screen very quickly to do that and hopefully put it back into presentation mode, please. The first, oh, hello. Are we in presentation mode at least? If never going back through them. The first is that you can see Kari on her TED Talk if you type into Google Kari Herbert with TED Talk. There's a great TED Talk that I highly recommend people watch. But if you are free on the 3rd of August for a couple of weeks, you can also join Kari, who is the special guest on Poseidon's in-depth Arctic expedition and polar bear safari. Obviously, you've already alluded to that. The dates of that cruise, 3rd of August to the 16th of August. So you would have to be available soon, but excited, I'm sure you are, Kari. Are you looking forward to that?
I can't wait. I really can't wait.
We have got there are some remaining spaces on board, not many, but Poseidon have been really kind to offer that if there is any interest in this from anyone watching and you're free, you would get 50% off any remaining spaces. So if you are, that is a great deal. Please don't tell too many of your fellow passengers, but if there is, do get in touch. It's only pockets, so we'll find out. If you're interested in free, we'll find out what's available. We'll come back to you, but there's 50% off that as well. Email address on screen, or give us a call from 9 o'clock tomorrow. And then, most importantly, well, not most importantly, but someone's won a prize. So it's Kari's latest book, as well as some Northwest Passage Expedition gin. And the winner tonight is Mary Spence. So Mary, assuming you're still on, I think you're one of our question askers, actually. So I think you're on there somewhere. If you can email PRIS, which is Polar Routes Inspiration Series at polarroutes.co.uk, and then we will sort you out and get that sent out to you. that's it for this evening. There are also some very special offers on Poseidon at the moment, including 30% off any remaining cruises in the Arctic this season, and for Antarctica as well. There's up to 25% off. And if you are more long-term planning for next year, 2023, there's 23% anniversary special on as well. So do get in touch if any of those are of interest to you. Quite a number of the offers, Kate, finish in August, don't they? So there's a little bit of time, but not loads. So do get in touch if that's something that we can help you with. That's it from us. Thank you again so much, Kari. Thank you so much, Kate, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed the last hour and 10 minutes. So thank you very much to you both. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and do keep in touch. We will let you know when the next Polar Inspiration series is coming up. You can be sure of that. Stay cool in the heat. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.